So who's into the idea of musky fragrances? Are you into sexy fragrances? And what about molecular fragrances? Do you enjoy molecular fragrances? And what I mean by molecular fragrances, I'm talking about or referring to notes like ISOE Super, I'm talking about Ambroxan, I'm also talking about things like Galaxolide, you name it. There's a ton of them out there and they're featured in these fragrances today, and I find them to be super sexy and musky. So find out about super sexy musky molecular fragrances coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. Yesterday we're talking about super sexy fragrances, musky fragrances, utilizing molecular notes. These are not fragrances that utilize all molecular notes. Some do, and some feature other notes as well, but they've thrown in the molecular notes to create like these musky concoctions that are really, really sexy. I find a lot of these fragrances sexy. If you're into the idea of these kind of notes, you're going to enjoy these fragrances. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first fragrance I'm going to talk to you about, I'm not even 100% sure what's in here because they have not advertised the notes. This is from the house of MAISON CRIVELLI, and the fragrance is called Ingredients, this one right here. So it's Ingredients 07212. So it's a fragrance specifically created for Ingredients Boutique in Prague. Are you guys in Prague? So it's an exclusive there, or you can buy the fragrance on MAISON CRIVELLI's website. I have a link in the info box. So for me, it's unpublished notes, but for me, it's definitely very molecular. It's definitely very musky and also very, very sexy. There's definitely like ambery touches in here, like fruitiness and citruses, and then there's like a cloth-like leather saffron thing happening in here. It doesn't wear very heavy. It's not like Patchouli Magnetic in this collection, which is in the red bottle, or Hibiscus Mahajat, or the Amber Chromatique. This is something completely different. It's a bit more personal, but I find it to be very, very sexy. And I'm assuming they have Ambroxan in here, or some kind of a molecular note to give you that kind of very sexy vibe. So the first fragrance we're going to talk about, as I said, is Ingredients 07212 from the house of MAISON CRIVELLI. Have you guys sampled that one? I highly recommend it. You should definitely check it out, especially if you're into the idea of molecular fragrances or sexy kind of unique fragrances that are not like extremely big and screamers. Moving on to the house of Givenchy, it's MMW. Really sexy combination of notes for me, and I like that they've thrown in Ambroxan and ISOE Super in here, and I do have those fragrances from Eccentric Molecules in this video as well. I've left them off as bonus fragrances, so stay tuned for those because everybody knows about them. But this particular fragrance not only has the ISOE Super and the Ambroxan, but you've got this kind of creamy, woody Palo Santo in here. There's Vetiver, there's Cedar, and some light, fresh spices of cardamom. It's very, very sexy. Really, really enjoy this one, and I like the combination of ISOE Super, which is actually a woody note and also musky, and then of course Ambroxan, which is supposed to replace the note of ambergris. Really sexy stuff here. MMW, check it out if you don't know that one. Moving on to the house of DS and DURGA, this is I Don't Know What, this one right here. Initially, this was supposedly an enhancer, a primer, and things like that, but on their own, it's super sexy. So basically, you can wear it on its own, have this kind of a musky experience, and wear it in the heat, or wear it in situations where you know your body's going to heat up. For me, if you wear it in the winter time when it's cold outside, and you don't move around a lot, this is not going to smell as great as when you wear it in the heat, or you know you move around a lot and you can smell the fragrance, because the heat of your body will activate the notes in here. So there's ISOE Super here, there's Bergamot, Vetiver or Vetiviral Acetate, Ambroxan, and Civitone. Civitone is a synthetic form of civet. So I guess there's a light animalic touch in here. I don't get much of it. I mostly get the Ambroxan and of course the ISOE Super. It's a woody, it's musky, it's ambergris-ish, ambery, and then of course light fruitiness comes in as well, or I should say more like a citrusiness from the Bergamot, and Bergamot itself is kind of floral as well, so it's citrusy floral, and then of course the earthiness of the Vetiver or Vetiver Acetate, which is actually a synthetic form of Vetiver, which I agree, it smells really fantastic. This stuff right here is really, really wonderful. I should also be upfront and let you guys know, when I first smelled it at Barney's here in San Francisco on a cold day, I didn't think twice about it. When I was down in LA back in 2019 in the summertime, and I went to the DTLA Lucky Scent, or scent bar. I sampled this there, instantly bought it because it smells amazing. So I don't know what from the house of DS and Durga. You can wear that on your own, as I said, on its own, or you can also enhance other fragrances with it. Moving on to the house of Juliette Has a Gun. It's not a perfume superdose, and I've spoken a lot about that fragrance, and sadly I don't have the fragrance here with me. And not a perfume superdose is an intense version of not a perfume, which a lot of people say they cannot smell the fragrance itself. But if you're looking for something similar to not a perfume, an overdose of Cetalox, which is a cousin of Ambroxan, then you should definitely try not a perfume superdose. I feel like these molecular fragrances that are single note, in this case the Cetalox in not a perfume superdose, you put it on and you might be anosmic to it, you might not smell it, but once it mixes with your own body chemistry and your own smell, I think it creates a very, very sexy smell on its own, with the connection of somebody's own musk or their own smell. So I really like these kind of fragrances for this particular reason, and I find them to be very, very sexy, and I think Not a Perfume Superdose is a great example of it. If you can't smell it, give it a try several times. A lot of these fragrances you might not be able to smell. I think you need to work your nose and then have them smell it so they finally appear. So I don't have the bottle, as I said, with Not a Perfume Superdose. I've shown it many times on videos. I just don't know where it is right now, but a great fragrance for you to try. Not a Perfume Superdose from the house of Juliette Has a Gun. So moving on to the house of Commodity. This is Paper minus this one right here. So Paper minus is a woody, musky, ambery fragrance, and for me it's very, very sexy because I find this to be not necessarily the main fragrance in the black bottle, but also not the plus, which is a heavy version of that fragrance. This is more personal and definitely a lot more musky. Somebody has to get close to you, but I think these are the kind of intimate type of fragrances I find to be very, very, very sexy, especially like when you're really close to someone or you're intimate with someone and they're wearing something like this. And of course, as I said, if they mix with your own chemistry, they create their own kind of a smell and it becomes very, very sexy. But this one is sweet, is a woody for sure, and of course musky and ambery as well. So Paper minus, check it out, from the house of Commodity. Really love that one. And then moving on to the house of Obvious Parfums. This is Unboise, this one right here. I recently featured it as simple fragrances to wear, clean fragrances to wear for office situations and things like that. But this is also very, very sexy. I really love the way the fragrance is composed with all the different notes going into it. It's lots of woods. Obviously it's called Unboise, boise referring to woods in French, but it's got vetiver, ambroxan, cedar, papyrus, black pepper, Gurjan, balsam, bergamot, and I feel like the cedar actually is ISOE super in this one, and so it's a very, very woody composition, and of course very musky as well. The ambroxan has these kind of touches, musky, ambery, woody, and then of course dusty kind of powdery woods touch in here as well. Unboise, really, really wonderful fragrance. Very underrated house, and also not uber expensive fragrances. I have a link to the fragrances for Obvious, and you can get a discount at ZGO Perfumery of 15% off on the entire collection. So up next, going to the house of JUSBOX. This is Cheeky Smile, this one right here. So this particular fragrance and the fragrances of this house are all inspired by music. This particular fragrance on its own is inspired by acid house music from the late 80s, one of my favorite styles. So this is actually a great interpretation of that kind of style of music. It's very synthetic and also very screechy, scratchy kind of. So it's all like molecular notes. So it's ISOE super, there's Ambroxan, it's Cashmeran, there's Ambrocenide, there's Amber Extreme. So it's very ambery. It's also very, very woody, and then very, very musky. So the combination of all these notes, again, you might be anosmic to something like this, but just put it on, test it out, keep trying it. You'll eventually grow, not grow, but you'll eventually start smelling it, because your nose might not be picking it up because it's so new kind of a smell, and you're not used to these kind of notes because you're kind of probably new to fragrances and things like that. But for me, it's a really heavy take on a molecular fragrance with lots of different molecular notes, as I said. So it gets very, very woody, dusty, also powdery, very ambery, and of course musky too. So Cheeky Smile from the house of JUSBOX. It's a great molecular fragrance. Really love wearing that one. Moving on to the house of BVLGARI, this is TYGAR, this one right here. So this one has some complexity to it, but it's still very simplistic. It's mostly about the Ambroxan, and there's grapefruit in here and some woods as well. It's a very, very sexy smell. The Ambroxan and the grapefruit together is a match made in heaven, I think. Really a wonderful combination. Of course, Ambroxan is ambery, woody, musky, a bit aquatic, marine, kind of thrown in with that zing and bitterness of the grapefruit, and of course lots of woods. And this stuff, when you wear it, I think it's very sexy on someone. It smells really fantastic because it gets in there and, you know, blends with your own pH and your musk and your own body chemistry, and then it creates for a wonderful smelling fragrance and a great, great trail. So TYGAR from the house of BVLGARI, I think it's super fantastic. And the same thing with this one. I think this is a great fragrance and it creates a great smell off of someone. I've smelled it off of people and thought, my God, they smell amazing. So this is another 13 from the house of LABO. Again, a lot of people think they can't smell anything here. Like when they buy this fragrance, they think they're just buying alcohol. Give it time, test it out. Wear it over and over again, you'll start smelling it and you'll wonder and you'll realize what a sexy musky fragrance this is. And I feel like it is very, very sexy. It's got Ambroxan, Jasmine, Moss, Ambret. So this is kind of like a distant cousin to something like Baccarat Rouge, which I do have here. And it looks like I didn't bring it here either, but I'm going to tell you about it in a bit. But if you don't know another 13, probably the best fragrance from LABO, but if not a best fragrance, definitely a top 5 from this house, because I really love its simplicity and also its muskiness, and then for sure its you know, amber woodiness as well. Anyway, it's another 13 from the house of LABO. So moving on to the house of Thomas Cosmala. This is number 4, Après l'Amour, and wow, this is also a very, very intensified take on Ambroxan with musks. Lots of musks here and also Ambroxan. So a lot of people might not be into the idea of Ambroxan, and there's a lot of people that really enjoy Ambroxan. You got to enjoy Ambroxan to enjoy a lot of these fragrances that feature Ambroxan, and this one is an Ambroxan bomb, but it's a very concentrated, intense take on Ambroxan. As I said, it's got musk as well, and there's amber, aromatic spices, some woods, and also some lemon zest. The lemon zest in here is very, very light. For me, it's basically in-your-face Ambroxan, like all of its glory with its ambery touches, its woody touches, dusty powdery touches, its light you know, marine touches in there, and then of course its muskiness. So this is number 4, Après l'Amour from Thomas Cosmala. And then going to the house of Mise en Cire, this is For Your Love, this one right here. Once again, a very super sexy musky molecular fragrance, and it features notes of exaltone, which is a musk, Cashmeran, which is kind of sort of like ambergris because it's replacing ambergris. There's raspberry in here, there's benzoin in here, and also patchouli. For me, it's very, very sexy. It's very, very musky. This stuff is really, really great in the heat as well. The trail is super fantastic. I've smelled it off of people. I've smelled it off of me, and I love the way it smells. And in the heat, it just blooms and comes alive, and I really love it. It's kind of like a different take on Baccarat Rouge, once again. A little different, not as like in-your-face Ambroxan with that whole saffron note that's in there, but you know, a different take on that whole note of Ambroxan, but in this case it's Cashmeran. Really wonderful fragrance, really love it. For Your Love from the house of Mise en Cire is at number 11. So as I said, I don't have my bottle of Baccarat Rouge 540 Extrait here, but I've spoken quite a bit about it and I find it to be super sexy and molecular as well. They mention it's ambergris, but I don't think it's ambergris. Maybe they might have traces of ambergris in there. I find it to be Ambroxan because it smells like Ambroxan to me, and I feel like this is the note that is very, very sexy, and that's what people like about this particular fragrance, because it leaves a massive trail. People smell it, then they go asking for what is that smell, and then they buy the fragrance, and it's a big time seller, and then it's cloned to death. And I like this about this one. It features ambergris, Ambroxan, as I said. There's almonds here, there's jasmine, there's musk, there's saffron, and amazing fragrance. One time I hated it, and now I really love it because I love its trail. What are your thoughts on Baccarat Rouge 540? And I'm talking about the Extrait version, but you can also, you know, wear the original, which is also fine as well. But let me know, put a comment down, and if you don't know about this, check it out. I really enjoy it. Then we're going to talk about a fragrance from the House of Fleur called Missing Person. This one right here. Very subdued fragrance, very personal, but a really beautiful fragrance, because when somebody gets close to you after you've had it on and you've got that body heat, you know, intensified, and I think the fragrance itself just totally blooms and comes alive. But it features notes of skin musk. There's bergamot here, there's sheer jasmine, fresh cyclamen, neroli blossom, orange flowers, sandalwood, blonde woods, white musk. Very musky, very molecular, and also floral. This might be a little more complex with notes, but for me, I feel like it wears very, very sheer. So you've got to be into skin scents. It's a skin scent. It's in the end, it's called Missing Person. So the person's missing, but you're left with the smell kind of a thing. That's the whole idea, I believe, and I think that's what happens with this particular fragrance. You can also, I think, layer this with other fragrances or use it as a primer, which a lot of these fragrances you can do with. So Missing Person is the 13th fragrance I'm talking about. And then finally, the last fragrance I'm going to talk to you about is from the house of What We Do Is Secret. This is Mono Scent G, and it's basically featuring the note of galaxolide. And it smells super sexy and super musky. So galaxolide is like a musk in fragrances. It's a synthetic musk. And this to me wears simplistic. On its own, it's sexy, it's personal, it's musky, but you're not using real deer musk. It's synthetic, as I said, but really wonderful fragrance. If you like the idea of musky fragrances and you have tried something like original musk from the House of Kiehl's, you're finding it to be very, very thin, not long lasting. You can layer it with something like this. It intensifies the fragrance, because this is a musk after all, a synthetic musk. And to me, I believe Musk Ravager, not Musk Ravager, but Original Musk is also utilizing galaxolide. So you can just intensify the fragrance, or any other kind of musky fragrances. You can also combine them with fragrances here. Paper Minus and galaxolide and the Mono Scent G is amazing. I just really think it's a very sexy fragrance, and when somebody gets close to you, they'll tell you what you're wearing or ask you, and they'll wonder why you smell so great. So that's what I think about this one. This is What We Do Is Secret Mono Scent G, and that's the last fragrance for you today. What are your thoughts on these fragrances? Do you enjoy these kind of fragrances? Are you a fan of molecular fragrances? Do you enjoy musky fragrances? And do you like your fragrances to be sexy? If you like the idea of molecular fragrances and you like them to be, you know, musky, definitely try these fragrances out and test them out. And of course, if you're thinking you can't smell anything, give it some time. Make your noses get used to these kind of notes, because when I first smelled something like Molecule 1, I couldn't smell anything. I gave it some time and I finally could smell it. Same thing with Molecule 4. I had a hard time smelling it, and now it's so super strong on me. Anyway guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. One last thing I should ask is if you have any other recommendations for similar kinds of fragrances utilizing molecular notes, they're sexy, they're musky, put a comment down so I can find out. But other than that, please like this video, please share it, follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye. Okay, as I mentioned, I do have some bonus fragrances, and I'm basically going to talk to you about the 3 fragrances that I find super sexy from the house of eccentric molecules. Starting with Molecule 1, it's all about ISOE Super, very personal, it's a skin scent, but man, I know people that wear this and I could smell it off of them. They can't smell it, I can, which is kind of a cool thing. It's a really beautiful woody kind of cedar / lightly sandalwoody fragrance, which is amazing. If you haven't tried their other fragrance, Molecule 2, utilizing Ambroxan, definitely try that as well. Ambroxan is in a lot of fragrances. Here we have a kind of a light form of Ambroxan, and once it gets onto your body, it creates a really beautiful musk. This might be less smelly than the previous one, but I know many people have had problems smelling Molecule 1, many people. And then finally, Molecule 4, it's a very creamy woody fragrance, and it utilizes Javanol, and Javanol is a creamy sandalwood. So basically it's to replace the usage of sandalwood, but man, this stuff smells creamy, just beautiful, very, very woody and musky. And same thing with this one. When I first got it, I couldn't smell that stuff. After 3 or 4 tries, it's so strong on me now, and I love it on its own. And I think you can combine the Javanol and the galaxolide together to create kind of like a creamy, woody, musky fragrance. But yeah, all these fragrances are really sexy on their own by themselves and or layered with other fragrances to boost them up or enhance them and things like that. Anyway, thanks so much for watching today. Have a good one. Bye-bye.